What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. I got some big picture takeaways from the Chargers giving the Vikings BTA on Thursday Night Football. We'll dive into this game from all angles and what it means for both teams moving forward this season. I want to admit the truth about Trevor Lawrence that people in my city just refuse to admit. Listen, the history that the Jaguars have had at quarterback has set the bar pretty low. Trevor Lawrence has had some moderate success, but eventually there's only so many excuses that you can make for a guy that currently is the fifth highest paid quarterback in the league and also is a former first overall pick. We are a football podcast. We pride ourselves on talking NFL, college football 24/7, 365 days throughout the year. But on a few rare occasions, we will dive into other sports from time to time. And we got to talk about the NBA. Listen, when you have a huge gambling takedown, 30 people arrested, including a head coach and a current player, we got to discuss it. And for a good amount of teams, the season is already over. Jets, Raiders, if you're a fan of any of those two teams, you already got the mock draft simulators going and you're trying to figure out which quarterback are you going to draft in next year's draft. And I got a pretty good idea who should be the first quarterback taken off the board. We'll dive into that. If you live, eat, breathe, and sleep football, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. If you don't want your favorite team to get BTA like how the Vikings just did last night, rate JT Sports 5 stars, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. JT Sports is available. The links are down in the pinned comment and description down below. And let's dive into it. The Chargers put belt to ass on the Minnesota Vikings last night. This game wasn't even close. And at this point, the Chargers are a playoff lock. Now the question is, how far can this team go in the postseason? Right now, the Chargers are not even close to being 100%. It seems like anytime they get a few guys back healthy, they lose 3 more guys to injuries. For example, they got Khalil Mack and Joe Alt who have missed a good amount of games, and then they lose Derwin James and Mekhi Becton in the process. The good thing for the Chargers, however, is with how well Justin Herbert has been playing, along with the guys who have been able to step up, by the time we get to January, the Chargers will be near full strength. And you want to play your best football heading into the playoffs, which the Chargers very well on pace to be able to do so. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And the real football season begins after Thanksgiving. That's when we start to see the separation between the pretenders and the contenders. And the Chargers very much well are a contender. And we keep hearing how wide open the NFL is this year. Anybody can win the Super Bowl. Well, if that's the case, why can't the Chargers make a run at it this year? By the time they get into the playoffs, everybody that has missed time this season with injuries is going to be healthy. Joe Alt, Khalil Mack, Derwin James, or Marion Hampton should all be at full strength by the time we see the Chargers playing postseason football. Now that next question lies, can Justin Herbert play good enough in the playoffs to win the Chargers to Super Bowl? Why can't he? The guy has been carrying the Chargers on his back for the past 2 seasons. He has Greg Roman as his offensive coordinator. This was the same guy who the Baltimore Ravens scapegoated for being the reason why Lamar Jackson has been unable to come up big in the playoffs. His passing concepts were criticized. They were called elementary level. Well, Justin Herbert gets the same OCE that everybody scapegoated for Lamar not being able to get over the hump in the playoffs. And he's been able to have some of the most efficient numbers throwing the football out of any quarterback in the NFL. And look, if you watch Justin Herbert play and your conclusion is he's overrated, you need to go get your eyes checked. Because obviously you're not seeing what everybody else is seeing on the field. Every coach, every player that has gone up against Justin Herbert has said that he's an elite quarterback. Not only is Justin Herbert carrying the Chargers passing attack, but look what he's doing on the ground. Who knew that Justin Herbert had this much wiggle in his game? Yeah, there's a difference between straight line speed, being able to pick up 5-10 yards if it's there, but Justin Herbert is making guys miss. He's putting moves on dudes. He's doing juke moves on linebackers, breaking ankles. I mean, we saw Justin Herbert pull off an ankle breaker against the Vikings that nobody's talking about at all. No highlights have been posted of it. I was like, well, damn, Justin Herbert, I didn't know you could do all this. I see why Jim Harbaugh wakes up every day and says, yeah, I got to get Justin Herbert a Super Bowl. This is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And it's an absolute tragedy that we judge Justin Herbert based solely on his lack of postseason success. Justin Herbert has 10, 15 more years of football left in him. Eventually, he will win a playoff game, and this year will be that year. With how well Justin Herbert has been playing behind the offensive line that has been ravished with injuries even before the season started, down his two top running backs, he still is elevating this offense. You got a great group of receivers that Justin Herbert has to throw the football to. We know about Lat McConkey and Keenan Allen. But how about this rookie tight end that they got out of Syracuse, Oronde Gadsden, who looks like the second coming of Antonio Gates? You can't tell me that Oronde Gadsden doesn't look like Antonio Gates 2.0. This man is a matchup nightmare. You can't line him up with a linebacker because there are not too many linebackers in the NFL that can guard a tight end like Oronde Gadsden one-on-one with how polished of a route runner he is. And also, after the catch, with his size and his speed, not too many defensive backs can tackle that in the open field. Oronde Gadsden is the unsung hero of the Chargers season. Because when Amarion Hampton went down and the offensive line was struggling and the production and the passing game wasn't there, you're wondering who's going to be that person who can step up. Do the Chargers need to trade for a wide receiver? No. They got Oronde Gadsden to save the day. Oronde Gadsden has a exact similar skill set to Antonio Gates. When Antonio Gates was in his prime, nobody could guard him. You wasn't going to put a linebacker on that. And you damn sure weren't going to put a safety on that neither. So how do you guard somebody like Oronde Gadsden? You can't. And once we get into the playoffs, Oronde Gadsden is going to be one of those players that steps up and makes plays that gets the Chargers deep in the postseason. And normally you attribute the quarterback play for being the reason why teams make a playoff run. But when you got a guy as talented as Justin Herbert and you got a tight end that's so much of a mismatch like the way Oronde Gadsden is, it kind of makes your offense impossible to game plan for. Once they get Amarion Hampton back and the offensive line gets near full strength, it's going to be really hard for defensive coordinators to game plan for this Chargers offense. They just are so balanced. They can beat you so many different ways. They have so many good players on this offense, along with a quarterback that's playing out of his freaking mind right now. If the NFL truly is wide open, then the Chargers have as good as opportunity as anybody to make it out of the AFC and possibly win the Super Bowl. We know that Jim Harbaugh is a good football coach. We know that Justin Herbert is a good quarterback. And they also have Jesse Minter as their defensive coordinator, who more than likely will be a head coach next year. He will be one of the top candidates out there that is an assistant. So the Chargers have the personnel, they have the coaching, they have the quarterback play, they have everything that you need to make a deep playoff run. And on top of that, they already beat Kansas City once this year. If they can beat them once, they can beat them twice, and they also could beat them if they see them in the playoffs. Right now, outside of Kansas City, who else do you trust to make it out of the AFC? It definitely ain't the Ravens or the Bills. The defense isn't there, and I don't trust the coaching for either one of those teams. Pittsburgh doesn't have the firepower on offense that the Chargers have. If Aaron Rodgers had Arondé Gatson, Lat McConkey, and Keenan Allen, then I would view the Steelers as the front runners to make it out of the AFC. This is the Chargers' year. If you ever get bored during the middle of the day and you're trying to talk some football, join the JT Sports Discord server, man. Link is down in the description and pinned comment below. We're trying to talk some ball with you, man. We want to hear from you. Go ahead and join the JT Sports Discord server. All the links are in the description and pinned comment section below. The Minnesota Vikings, during this offseason, took a huge swing that has slammed their Super Bowl window shut closed. They had Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones both on their team last year. And both of these guys have been playing some really good football this season. The Minnesota Vikings had a chance to bring one of these two guys back. And instead, they chose to let them both walk because they had confidence that JJ McCarthy being able to have a redshirt season, yeah, it was due to injury, but he was able to sit back for a year, look behind the veteran and Sam Darnold, and learn how to prepare and learn how to carry himself as a pro. And the Vikings felt comfortable with JJ McCarthy starting this year because he was on a rookie contract. So even if they didn't expect for him to be that good, with the money that they could pour into improving other positions like the offensive line, the defense, it would be good enough to help elevate JJ McCarthy to the point when even if JJ McCarthy had those growing pains that you expect out of a young quarterback, the team would be good enough to help carry him. And unfortunately, that plan that the Vikings had hasn't really worked out that way. Carson Wentz is garbage. All right, you can say with what we've seen out of JJ McCarthy, although it is a small sample size, that JJ McCarthy is garbage. Carson Wentz is doo-doo garbage. Carson Wentz shouldn't be playing a single snap of professional football ever again unless it's in the UFL. We watched Carson Wentz stare at wide open receivers all night long last night, and instead of pulling the trigger, he just took sacks. And then he had the audacity to go on the sidelines and throw a temper tantrum. Carson Wentz shouldn't be playing a single snap in the NFL anymore as a starting quarterback. His time in the league is done. So that means when JJ McCarthy gets healthy, which is expected that he will play in the Vikings' upcoming game coming up against the Detroit Lions, he can't be no worse than Carson Wentz. And even though JJ McCarthy is better than Carson Wentz, is he good enough to turn this season around for Minnesota? Will he be good enough to put the Minnesota Vikings in Super Bowl contention? I don't believe so. If the Vikings had Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones right now, we would be viewing them as not just one of the best teams in the NFL, but probably the team to beat who has the best opportunity to stop Kansas City from winning another ring. Their defense is great. We know that Brian Flores is the best defensive coordinator in the league. And their offensive line, they spent a lot of money on improving that position. And injuries have hindered the offensive line play a good amount this season. But eventually they will get guys back healthy. And when they do, JJ McCarthy will have some pretty good protection up front. But even when the Vikings were healthy, JJ McCarthy still didn't really show us that much to be optimistic about, to have confidence that he can be the one to maximize the Super Bowl window that the Vikings feel that they currently have right now. They rolled the dice and drafted JJ McCarthy because they wanted to take advantage of the amount of cap space that you can get when you have a young quarterback on a rookie deal. But in order for you to maximize that, he has to play at least above average. You're not asking for JJ McCarthy to be Lamar or Patrick Mahomes. You're asking him to be Brock Purdy. But he doesn't even look like he can be that. And coming out of Michigan, everybody and their mama had their fair share of concerns about JJ McCarthy's ability to be a winning quarterback in this league. When he was at Michigan, he was a handoff merchant. He wasn't really asked to throw the football that much. The one time Michigan asked JJ McCarthy to put the team on his shoulders, he lost. And that was in his first playoff game against TCU when it got upset. He threw 2 interceptions in that game. He had a really bad pick 6. When you ask JJ McCarthy to win the game throwing the ball 25 times or more, you're asking to lose. He's not that kind of quarterback. He's a quarterback that has to be in a run-centric offense. And Kevin O'Connell is not a run-centric coach. He wants to be able to throw the football all over the yard. And it's for a very good reason. You have one of the best receivers in NFL history. You also have a bunch of other good targets for J.J. McCarthy to throw the football to. So asking J.J. McCarthy to just be a game manager is kind of asking Kevin O'Connell to change his philosophy. And yes, the head coach has to be able to adapt to the strength of his quarterback. Kevin O'Connell is supposed to be a quarterback whisperer, though. So if he has to change his philosophy around J.J. McCarthy, then you're asking for him to be something that he's not, which is a coach that has to rely on running the football and great defense to win. That is not in Kevin O'Connell's DNA. And with him being forced to change his philosophy for J.J. McCarthy, it further enforces the point that he isn't ready to be in there yet. If you don't trust your quarterback, then how are you going to be able to make a deep run in the playoffs? How are you even going to be able to make it out of your division and get a playoff spot when this is arguably the toughest division in the NFL? You got the Lions, the Packers, who already have established quarterbacks and very good rosters, Super Bowl caliber rosters. The Chicago Bears, we still have a lot of questions about Caleb Williams, but there are glimpses and there are flashes there. And with how well Ben Johnson has this team playing right now on both sides of the ball, the Bears could very much well be in the mix for a playoff spot. And the Vikings right now could be the odd team out of this division that ends up missing the playoffs altogether. And then we go into this offseason asking, is J.J. McCarthy truly the right guy at quarterback for the Vikings? Did they truly make a mistake reaching for him, drafting him 10th overall? Because I never believed that J.J. McCarthy was worthy of being a top 15 selection. He was a back of the end, first-round guy. Yeah, the physical tools are there for J.J. McCarthy to be a great quarterback, but you just didn't see the consistency at Michigan throwing the football to believe that right now he will be able to maximize the Minnesota Vikings Super Bowl window like how the GM and Kevin O'Connell thought he would be able to do. And J.J. McCarthy is another case study of how just because you go to a great situation from a talent standpoint, offensive-minded coach, great receivers to throw the football, doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to pan out and be a great quarterback. J.J. McCarthy kind of reminds me a lot of Trey Lance. Trey Lance, he was inconsistent in the few starts that he had with San Francisco. He was oftentimes injured. And when you miss so many games with injury, like how J.J. McCarthy has, then you lose meaningful snaps of development. And right now, J.J. McCarthy, although he's in his second season, he still is a rookie because this is his first season starting. So he still is pretty green. He still is pretty raw, and he's going to make a lot of mistakes. And I said this before this season started, and a bunch of Vikings fans got mad at me. They called me a hater for me just being honest about the situation. The Minnesota Vikings don't have time for J.J. McCarthy to develop. They felt going into this season that having him on a rookie quarterback gave them a great opportunity to maximize their Super Bowl window due to the amount of money that they were able to pour into other positions. And when you have a team that has high expectations, that expects to win, the amount of patience that they're going to have for a young quarterback like J.J. McCarthy is going to be very thin. And you can't do anything but go home at night if you're Kevin O'Connell and sleep over the fact that you passed on Aaron Rodgers, who could have made you a contender this year. You didn't re-sign Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold, which if you had at least one of those dudes on the team starting for you right now, you probably are in the mix for being the best team in the NFC. You went from winning 14 games last season to now on pace to probably winning either 7 or 8, 9 at best. That's a huge drop-off. And Brian Flores probably ends up getting another opportunity as a head coach next year. So the defensive coordinator that you bring in probably isn't going to be as good as what Brian Flores is, and your defense is more than likely going to drop off. So this season, it's just nothing but a missed opportunity because the Vikings refuse to be a Super Bowl contender because instead of getting a proven veteran or bringing back the proven vets that they had at quarterback in Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones or going after Aaron Rodgers, they chose to roll the dice on JJ McCarthy, and it has backfired in a really bad way, and it has cost them the Super Bowl window. If you don't want the starting quarterback for your favorite football team to play like Anthony Richardson, give JT Sports a 5-star review. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, JT Sports is available. The links are down in the description and pinned comment below. Eventually, we got to reach a point with Trevor Lawrence when we stop making excuses and we hold him to the expectations of a former first overall pick and a guy that currently is the 5th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. You see, the quarterback history that the Jaguars have had, Blaine Gabbert, Chad Henne, Blake Bortles, Nick Foles, Gardner Minshew, has set the bar so low that with the moderate success that Trevor Lawrence has had, leading this team to the AFC South title in the playoffs, winning a playoff game in his second season, has made the fan base hold on to the potential that Trevor Lawrence has instead of asking Trevor Lawrence, when is this potential going to turn into actual production? Because eventually you can only ride off potential so long until you just view a guy for what they are. And what Trevor Lawrence is an average quarterback. And Jaguar fans make all these excuses for Trevor Lawrence. Oh, the offensive line isn't good. Oh, the receivers, they dropped so many passes. When you are a former number 1 overall pick at quarterback, you are supposed to elevate your team. Andrew Luck, Cam Newton, carry franchises that didn't have a lot of talent around them, didn't have good offensive lines, didn't always have the best defenses to the playoffs. Cam Newton took the Carolina Panthers to the Super Bowl with Chad Ginn being his number 1 receiver. So it is not unfair to ask Trevor Lawrence to play up to the expectations that we've seen previous first overall picks at quarterback play at. But why is it that we are 5-6 years into Trevor Lawrence's career, and yet we still are making excuses for his erratic and inconsistent play? You want to know why Brian Thomas Jr. is having a sophomore slump? Because Trevor Lawrence has threw the brother so many hospital balls that he has PTSD anytime he's asked to catch the football in the middle of the field. But somehow that's not Trevor Lawrence's fault. Somehow Trevor Lawrence holding on to the football too long, having too many costly turnovers isn't his fault either. Eventually, if you are a Jaguars fan, the excuses you're going to run out of. And eventually you're going to have to accept the reality that Trevor Lawrence just isn't a good enough quarterback to ever bring a Lombardi to the city of Duval. When you draft a guy who had this generational label on him, that means that you had a bunch of confidence that he could be the guy to lead you to a Super Bowl. When I watch Trevor Lawrence play, I don't see a quarterback that has the ability to lead Jacksonville to a Super Bowl. All you're telling me is Trevor Lawrence is an average quarterback and the Jaguars overpaid for him. How can you make Trevor Lawrence the 5th highest paid quarterback in the NFL and then expect for the wide receiving core and the offensive line to be up to par when that amount of money that you're paying Trevor Lawrence could have been used to better improve those areas of the team? You pay a guy like Trevor Lawrence elite money like what you're paying him because he has the ability to elevate the team. That's what makes guys, quote, quote, franchise quarterbacks. Drake May is carrying the New England Patriots. He currently has them on top of the AFC East, despite having an offensive line that has allowed the second most sacks in the NFL and a below average run game, with Cardi B's baby daddy being his number one receiver. So if Drake May is carrying the Patriots on his back, despite all of the limitations that he has to overcome, why can't we expect the same from Trevor Lawrence? Why is Trevor Lawrence still the guy who gets all these excuses made for him, despite him getting paid more money than Lamar Jackson? It's not unreasonable to be skeptical and to criticize the inconsistency that we've seen out of Trevor Lawrence. The guy plays like Daffy Duck back there at quarterback. He's so uncoordinated to the point when he's off, he's really bad. He's skipping passes in the dirt. He's throwing guys into the emergency room. He's getting guys fucked up. Trevor Lawrence just isn't it. And you don't need 2 to 3 more years to know if a guy has it or not. We have seen enough out of Trevor Lawrence to know that he's an average, slightly above average quarterback at best. And every time I go out in public, Walmart, Publix, and I run into Jaguars fans in the city of Duval, they always tell me, hey, bro, you're too hard on Trevor Lawrence. What is it that makes me too hard on Trevor Lawrence? Because I'm holding him to the same expectations that we hold other quarterbacks that go first overall? When you go first overall, you are supposed to be able to elevate a franchise. You are supposed to be able to elevate a team that may not be strong at a bunch of positions. That's what comes with being the first overall pick. And Trevor Lawrence was a generational quarterback. Generational quarterbacks are supposed to be able to transcend their franchises. And Trevor Lawrence hasn't done that for Jacksonville. You keep saying he needs this, he doesn't have that. Then that further proves the point that Trevor Lawrence is a generational disappointment, and the Jaguars overpaid for a quarterback that doesn't have the ability to overcome limitations due to them investing so much money into him that they don't have the money to make sure that the offensive line is up to par, to make sure that he has receivers that can actually catch the football. I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence is fully responsible for the inconsistency that we have seen out of the Jaguars over the last couple of years. But what I am saying is that Trevor Lawrence has enough around him to where he should be able to elevate this team a lot further than where the Jaguars have gotten. I promise you guys that we are a football podcast, but when the NBA has 30 people arrested, including a current player and a current head coach, due to an illegal sports gambling ring, along with illegal underground poker games, we gotta talk about the NBA. So Chauncey Billups, the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, and Terry Rozier, who was on the Miami Heat, have been arrested along with 30 others, including a few mafia members, for a legal sports gambling operation. And I don't really care too much about the legal sports gambling aspect of this, because listen, when you bet on NBA games, there's a very high chance that a lot of these players are rigging the games, because it's easier to rig an NBA game than it is to rig an NFL game, due to you only having 5 players on the floor at the same time for both teams, compared to the NFL where it's 11 guys on the field at the same time. So it's more variables that have to go your way to rigging an NFL game than there are when it comes to the NBA. It's a lot easier to rig a game when you have less players on the floor than what you do on the field watching these NFL contests. And I remember a few months ago when the Dallas Mavericks randomly decided to trade away Luka Doncic to the Lakers. Don't you find it strange how the Lakers got one of the biggest stars in the NBA when they're on the brink of losing LeBron James, the most popular player that the league has ever had, to retirement? How do you keep the Lakers from falling back to irrelevancy pre-LeBron James? Oh, you give them Luka Doncic, and you ensure that they still are going to be in championship contention, and they still are going to be a team that everybody wants to watch. And how do you compensate the Mavericks for forcing them to move on from one of the best players in your league? Oh, you rigged the draft lottery. Despite the Mavericks not being one of the worst teams in the NBA, getting into the play-in tournament, having a very small chance of getting that lottery ball that gave them Cooper Flag, somehow they got that. That's not a conspiracy. That is not a coincidence. If the NBA has players within this league rigging these games, and the NBA is launching their own internal investigation and nothing is coming out of it, and then you end up seeing Luka Doncic getting traded to the Lakers out of nowhere, and then the Mavericks getting Cooper Flag in return as collateral for that. This isn't just a player or coach problem that the NBA has. This is an internal problem that the NBA has. Adam Silver launching an investigation into Terry Rozier, not finding any wrongdoing of him, but the FBI being able to uncover a bunch of facts that prove that Terry Rozier was rigging these games, helping people that were betting on his underpoints, his player props, further proves that the NBA is rigged. It's not a player problem. It's not a coaching problem. It starts up front with Adam Silver. And the NBA has been so poorly managed. It's no surprise why the NFL blows the NBA out in ratings every single year. The NBA Finals doesn't do anywhere as near the numbers as what the Super Bowl does, despite basketball being a more global sport. For basketball to be more international than what the NFL is, why is it that a regular smuggler Sunday night football game is drawing in more viewers than what the NBA Finals does? The NBA has been poorly ran, and that's why they have to rig these games. They have to rig the Luka Doncic trade to the Lakers to ensure that one of the most popular teams doesn't end up fading into irrelevancy. They don't go back to being a basement dweller. And they also are allowing their players to bet on themselves, bet on their unders, and then all of a sudden they want to act like nothing happens. And then we act surprised when you have this huge illegal sports gambling operation taking place because the NBA allowed this. When you allow bad habits to occur, it's hard to get those bad habits out of your league because you are the one who started those bad habits. And I'm not saying that the NFL doesn't do a little bit of rigging in their own, but the NFL doesn't have to rig certain outcomes. They don't have to rig who they want in the Super Bowl, because whoever plays in the Super Bowl, you got the Cleveland Browns going up against the New York Giants, and everybody is still going to eat it up because the NFL is not a player-driven league. It is a team-driven league. When you are watching the NFL, you're watching it not because of your favorite player necessarily, but more so because you're a fan of that team. If the Ravens were to lose Lamar Jackson, sure, you will have a good amount of people that will follow Lamar Jackson wherever he goes. But if you are a Ravens fan before you got Lamar, losing Lamar still doesn't mean that you won't be a fan of that team anymore. You still are going to root for Lamar wherever he goes, but your affiliation to the Ravens is not going to change. In basketball, that's not the same case. Oftentimes, the ratings are more so attached to the player than it is to the team. And this illegal sports gambling ring that Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier was a part of, along with the Mafia, further proves that the NBA rigged the Luka Doncic trade. They launched their own internal investigation into Terry Rozier, and nothing came out of it. But when the FBI looks into Terry Rozier, they find a bunch of overwhelming evidence. And yet, you want me to believe that the NBA didn't manufacture Luka Doncic getting traded to arguably the biggest brand in their league to ensure that the attention and the ratings that the Lakers get didn't drop when LeBron retires. And in collateral for that, the Mavericks get Cooper Flag in return. I'm not watching the NBA anymore. The NBA has shown me that they can't be trusted. And I can't watch a product that is stealing money from consumers, because that's essentially what the NBA was doing. We bet on these games. So if you are going to advertise sports gambling, you're going to throw all these Hard Rock, FanDuel, and DraftKings commercials at us, try to bribe us to put our hard-earned cash on these games, but allow guys like Terry Rozier, when you launch internal investigations, to be scot-free and not suffer any repercussions, it gives me all the reason in the world to blackball your product and to never watch a single game. And I've betted on a few amount of NBA games, and I would not be betting any more of my hard-earned cash on any more NBA games, because I can't trust this league to maintain the integrity of their game. You can say the NFL is rigged, but we've had more open examples of the NBA being rigged, wide in the open, than what we've had in the NFL. When you rig a basketball game, especially the way that Terry Rozier was playing a few months ago, to make sure that his under hit, then it shows me that I can't trust you, because you don't honor the integrity of your game. Follow us on all social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram at JT_, on X at JT__. TikTok, you can find us at JT__ as well. So you can stay up to date with everything that's going on with the JT Sports Podcast, along with updates and bonus content as well. Go ahead, follow us on Instagram and X. Links are down in the description and pinned comment section below. We reached that point of the NFL season where if you're a fan of a team that is uncompetitive and your season is all but over, like the Jets or the Raiders, it's time to get the mock draft simulators going and start eyeing which quarterback is going to be the first one taken off the board when the 2026 draft officially starts. And I think that it's pretty clear that Jaden Mayava is QB1 in the 2026 NFL draft. If you have any doubts about a quarterback class and you don't trust anybody in it, when in doubt, draft the Lincoln Riley quarterback. There is no QB1 in college football. Lincoln Riley himself is QB1. Every quarterback that Lincoln Riley touches ends up turning into, at least at worst, a solid starting quarterback in the NFL. You can never go wrong drafting a Lincoln Riley quarterback, which is why Jaden Mayava is QB1 in next year's draft class. I have yet to see a bad Hawaiian, Polynesian, or Samoan in the NFL. Jaden Mayava has everything that you look for in a capable starting quarterback. Very good arm, plays well within structure, has very good mobility, throws the ball well on the run, also has the ability to pick up yards with his legs. You can use him on design quarterback runs, read options, RPOs. Jaden Mayava is the safest quarterback in next year's draft class if he declares that any team could draft. Now, Fernando Mendoza at Indiana, I'm still not really that sold on him. Now, he looks solid, but his throwing motion is a little bit weird to me. I'm just not really sold on him. Carson Beck, I think he can be a functional starting quarterback in the league, but definitely not somebody that you take in the first round, especially in the top 10, the first overall. Dante Moore, I expect him to come back for another year. I wouldn't take a guy who only has 1 year of experience under his belt first overall, unless he was like a fourth or fifth year senior, and that's understandable. Jaden Mayava, it's just miles ahead of the other quarterbacks that are going to be eligible for the 2026 draft class, that if you are the Raiders or the New York Jets, it's worth going ahead and taking the season for him. Jaden Mayava can give you stable quarterback play. Lincoln Riley has showed us that he prepares quarterbacks for the NFL better than anybody else. And if you are in doubt, go ahead and take a quarterback from underneath him. It always works out pretty well. Look at how well Spencer Rattler has played. Although he graduated from South Carolina, I still view him as a Lincoln Riley quarterback. Caleb Williams, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. If you want to find a stable quarterback in the NFL, you go grab one from under Lincoln Riley's tutelage. Because for some reason, Lincoln Riley just has the secret formula for pumping up good quarterbacks in the league. I almost forgot. Jalen Hurts, he played under Lincoln Riley. Look how good he's been for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, you can debate just how good Jalen Hurts actually is. Is he a top 5 quarterback, a top 3 quarterback? Is he a top 15 quarterback? That's a debate for another day, but Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl champion, a Super Bowl MVP, and you can do a lot worse than him. So, based off Lincoln Riley's track record, if you are the Jets or the Raiders and you are in need of a quarterback, if somebody puts a gun to your head and forces you to draft one with the number 1 overall pick, if you get it next year, you can't go wrong with Jaden Mayava.